Hey, everybody, welcome back to another semester in U.S. history. We are starting with the 1920s and 30s as our first unit back. So, if you don't remember, please get out your notes, whether they be on paper or online, and let's get started. So, today we're talking about the Roaring Twenties. So, realistically, for this unit, we're only going to spend a couple of days on the Roaring Twenties. We're going to focus more on the 30s and the Great Depression. So, when people think of the 1920s, the idea of prosperity definitely comes into play. The standard of living had massively gone up here in the United States. And after World War I, like we talked about last semester, foreign countries were decimated by the war and needed American goods, which boosted U.S. business. As a result, the annual household income increased because these businesses were making more and more products. People could afford more modern conveniences, things that used to be reserved only for the wealthy, things like fridges, ovens, air conditioning, electricity in their homes, and cars. The 20s is really when we start to see people buy cars in mass quantities. Now, that being said, the upper classes had had cars for a while now, but this was really when the lower classes started to purchase vehicles. So let's talk about those real quick. So those really changed America's landscape, literally. You had to build roads, gas stations, hotels, and suburbs. And as a result, farms were no longer isolated. People could travel for shopping and entertainment and actually travel. And one of the most famous ones, and for those of you here in Carthage, you probably already know this, Route 66, which runs from Chicago to Los Angeles and runs through the city of Carthage. Now, it connected the East and the West like never before, and towns and businesses popped up all along the way along Route 66 to provide goods to those traveling. Cities also grew. 2 million people per year in the 20s left the farms and small towns and moved to the cities. Now, they moved there for more opportunity, and then more than half the population of the United States lived in cities by the 20s. And with it came a new lifestyle. It was faster pace. Small communities of neighbors changed to streets full of strangers. It used to be that you knew all of your neighbors. But now, during the 20s at least, and even to an extent the modern day, you may know a couple of them, but you don't know everybody. So, we've talked about people leaving the farms behind, but the farms were changing too into these larger farms. New machines made it a new efficient industry. Small farms were less common, and large companies began to take over farms and created big businesses. That's still true today. Now, following their involvement in the war effort and getting the 19th Amendment approved, women had a changing role during the 20s. One of them was that of the flappers, or socially free women that embraced new fashions and urban attitudes. And during this period, women started to take up newer jobs, such as teachers, nurses, librarians, typists, and secretaries, in much greater numbers. So let's talk about some pop culture real quick. So, radio was by far the most powerful way of communication. We're still a couple decades pre television. News, entertainment, and advertisements all went out over the radio. And by the end of the decade, 40% of households had a radio, or at least one, in their homes. Movies began. Now, not the type of movies we think about today in terms of length. The average movie during the 20s was maybe 15 to 20 minutes. Sports heroes like Babe Ruth were really changing things up in baseball, and Charles Lindbergh flew the Spirit of St. Louis across the Atlantic and became a national legend. But by far, one of the biggest things to come out of this and to affect people is prohibition. We've kind of already talked about this briefly. We introduced it last semester. Now, many Americans saw the new urban culture as deviant, materialistic, and morally corrupt. And reformer groups and religious groups were concerned about the direction of the nation, in which alcohol was then blamed. They then got the 18th Amendment passed to outlaw alcohol in 1920. Now, it was hard to enforce. Many people resented it and disagreed with it. People didn't stop drinking. It was a regular part of everyday life for a lot of people, and it turned average citizens into criminals overnight. It allowed for the expansion of illegal activities. Secret bars emerged everywhere, known as speakeasies, and organized crime grew. Prohibition is one of the reasons we have the Italian mafia. Now, with it came a growing disrespect for the law. Bootleggers made and smuggled liquor illegally. It was a very profitable business. And one of those people is one of the most famous mobsters of all time, Al Capone, who killed his competitors. He was worth $100 million and took over the city of Chicago. They wouldn't be able to arrest him for any of those crimes. They got him on tax evasion. Now, the 21st Amendment, this is the only amendment in human history that cancels out another, repealed the 18th Amendment in 1933. Like I said, it's the only amendment to ever have been repealed, and it's the only amendment that took away rights instead of granting or protecting them in U.S. history. All right, so that's it for notes for today. What you're going to do now is, if you haven't already, complete the Chapter 8 and 9 textbook activity. I'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.